Imagine this. It's sometime in the 5th century. A lone man is picking his way through the rubble of a huge, collapsed building. He's not a resident. No one is. He's a scavenger, looking for anything valuable, in a city that's been a ghost town for years. In the gloom, something small and bronze slips out of his hand, and it's lost in the debris. He never finds it.
So, that small object he dropped? It was a brooch, and it lay there totally undisturbed for 1,500 years. It's now a key clue in a really fascinating historical mystery, and that's what we're digging into today. The story of how Londinium, which was the biggest, richest city in Roman Britain, just vanished. How it became a feared, haunted swamp. Let's get in.
Our story really kicks off with that scavenger and the one thing he left for us to find. Archaeologists today call it the Billingsgate Brooch, and you can think of it as a silent witness to a lost era, a time when one of Europe's great capitals was, well, nothing more than an empty ruin.
Now, this isn't just a story about some old buildings falling down. We're talking about a complete societal collapse. For more than a century, this massive, once thriving city was utterly abandoned. It was a place so feared by the people who came after the Romans that they flat out refused to live inside its wall. To really understand the silence that fell over this place, you first have to understand the noise that came before it. So let's jump back in time, way back to the 2nd century AD, when Londinium was at its absolute glittering peak. And I mean, Londinium wasn't just some town. It was a marvel of Roman engineering. We're talking the largest basilica in Northwest Europe, a huge amphitheater for games, public baths with heated water for everyone, and beautiful homes with these intricate mosaic floors. People here were sipping wine and using olive oil that was imported all the way from Spain. This place was a well-oiled machine, built for commerce and for Roman order.
But here's the fatal flaw in the design. Londinium was basically an artificial island of Roman life, plopped down in Britain. It was incredibly expensive to run, and its entire existence, everything about it, depended on a constant flow of money, goods, and soldiers from the wider Roman Empire. So when that connection got cut, the city couldn't just adapt. It basically just stopped working.
You know, the end of Londinium wasn't some big dramatic event like a city getting buried by a volcano. It was something much slower and honestly, kind of more terrifying. It was a slow suffocation that happened over generations.
The problems really started back in the 3rd century, as the whole Roman economy started to crack. Then, by the 4th century, the money was drying up, and people just started leaving, drifting away to the countryside. And by the time the 5th century rolled around, the city was, for all intents and purposes, empty. A metropolis of 30,000 people just hollowed out.
And you know how archaeologists can see this decay? It's in the little details they find. For instance, iron became so rare and so expensive that people stopped using iron nails in their coffins. And the city's super advanced sewer system, the thing that kept the marshy ground dry, it got completely clogged with silt because no one had the money or the organization to clean it out anymore. In the final phases, it gets even worse. The suburbs just became wastelands. It looks like a small group of the super rich tried to hold out in the city center, almost like a little gated community, just denying what was happening. But in the end, even they had to flee. The city was so empty that people literally started growing wheat in the middle of what used to be bustling main street.
Over the decades, the whole city got covered by this weird, mysterious layer that archaeologists call dark earth. And that's basically what it sounds like. It's a thick blanket of rot, decay, and soil. The physical proof of nature just swallowing the city whole, burying the Roman world under a literal layer of silence. And as those drains failed, the river just started taking back the land. The massive ruins of Londinium slowly sank back into the marsh they were built on. I mean, excavations have found the remains of marsh beetles and even frogs inside the old city walls. Those are creatures that only live in swamps. The city had truly, completely reverted to wilderness.
So, picture this. The Romans are gone. The city is a swampy ruin. What did the next wave of people see when they arrived? For the newcomers in Britain, the Anglo-Saxons from Germany and Denmark, these ruins were not some great opportunity. To them, this was a place of deep, profound terror.
It's all about perspective, right? The Romans saw their city as this shining symbol of order and civilization. But the Anglo-Saxons, who lived in timber halls, they couldn't even imagine how humans could build these massive stone structures. To them, this could only be the work of giants, some cursed place left over from a mythical, scary past. And they were genuinely freaked out. They believed these crumbling buildings were haunted by ghosts and protected by ancient curses.
So, instead of moving into these empty, amazing villas, they built their own towns miles away out in the countryside. Archaeologists have even found ritual offerings left near the doorways of Roman buildings, probably left there to try and appease the evil spirits they thought were lurking inside.
For nearly 200 years, London stood completely empty. 200 years. Just let that sink in. For 2 centuries, it was a silent, forbidden monument where ivy was cracking the walls and trees were growing up through the mosaic floors. It was a testament to a civilization that had, from their perspective, just completely vanished.
And this brings us right back to where we started. That single, simple brooch, dropped by a scavenger in the ruins all those centuries ago, it's a real, tangible link to this forgotten era. It's a tiny reminder of the time the lights well and truly went out on one of the world's greatest cities.
You know, the story of Londinium really forces us to look at our own world. It makes you wonder, if the unbelievably complex global networks that supply our food, our power, our water, if they were to break down, how long would it really take for our own cities to fall silent? How long before our skyscrapers become nothing more than the mysterious work of giants for some future civilization to puzzle over?